Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sports Psych Show. Thanks so much for joining again. I'm really excited. Today I'm going to be talking with Lewis Hatchett, who is a former professional cricketer. He's now a yoga teacher and mentor. He's going to be filling you in with all the exciting stuff he's doing now. And he's got a really interesting background in sport, in human performance. He's got a hell of a story to tell. And rather than me introducing Lewis, I'm going to get him to introduce himself, but I'm just going to start with a quote, and I think it's a particularly pertinent quote for his story, but also for the Sports Psych Show, with regard to challenges that players, coaches and parents face when they want to search to be the best that they can be in their respective roles in sport. So here's the quote. Lewis said, "I believe my perceived weakness has given me great strength, and my big thing is finding a way. Every time I've hit a physical barrier, I've found a way around it. I never think about what I can't do, and I've never felt inferior." I've never felt inferior. I think that's a great quote. Lewis Hatchett, welcome to the Sports Psych Show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.
Would you mind introducing yourself to everybody, please? Give us a lowdown, what you've done, where you've been, and what you've been through.
So, my background was that I was a professional cricketer for 6 years, but like you said, I had a slightly different story in not only just professional cricket, but professional sport. I was born with a rare condition called Poland syndrome, which means that I'm missing my right pectoral muscle and two ribs that are directly behind where that's meant to be. So physically, I look different, I feel different, and my body is... When I was born, actually, the doctor that delivered me said that I wouldn't be able to play any sport. That was one of the first questions my dad asked when I was born, like, can my son play any sport? Because he literally delivered me and went, he's got Poland syndrome. So they didn't really know what that was, mum and dad, but the doctor went, he just won't be able to play many sports. And then I kind of grew up having been told that, but I have a younger brother who's only a year younger than me, and he's fully able-bodied, and like any sort of sibling rivalry, we grew up just competing against each other, slowly got introduced to sports, and then I got introduced to cricket, and that was the thing that I wanted to do. And growing up, I didn't see myself any different, but I guess subconsciously I did. But it really motivated me to kind of, when I continuously heard that I wasn't meant to be doing this, it was a real motivator to try and achieve it. So it's a unique story. I'm sure we can delve into it a little bit more, but the fundamentals is that it was is pretty unique to have this physical disability. And I hid it for quite a while. I think even that quote that you got was from when I had an article done in a newspaper, and that was the first time I'd ever spoken about it. And that was, I think it was like 2015, and that was 5 years into me playing professional cricket, and I'd never spoken about it. I'd never publicly come out and spoke about it, and that article massively transformed what I do. I now go out and not only do I teach yoga, but I do a lot of motivational speaking about this whole journey that I've had, because there's so many messages that come from it that are not just translatable into sport, but everyday life as well.
Okay, so just taking a couple of steps back. So you were born with this syndrome called Poland syndrome, which means physically you're missing your right pectoral muscle and two ribs. So aesthetically, you look a little bit different bodily wise. You've said you feel different, which I actually want to explore at some point here with regard developing technique and skill, because I think that's interesting. You mentioned the word motivation, and you said that the catalyst for the motivation was somebody saying to you, the doctor saying to you, well, you'll probably, or you won't play sport ever. So do you recall being motivated? Do you recall how that felt when you were a young person? do you think it made you think about sport differently from other people?
I think it's a really tough question because I get quite a lot of the time. How does your condition feel? And I would say, like, before I kind of really had a good body awareness and genuinely how it does feel a bit different. But before then, I would always say, well, how does your body feel? Like, how do you feel? Like, your normal is my normal. Like, I can't. How can I translate that over? And for the mentality side, I can only think back when I was a kid growing up trying to become a pro, that I was like, well, surely everyone's thinking like this. Like, this is how. And I kind of felt like I wasn't thinking like everyone else. I thought, oh, they're thinking better than me. They're more motivated than me. And I don't know. It was my own perception, which probably could have been wrong. But I was just constantly thought that I didn't feel different at the time. To be fair, I thought, oh, this is what everyone else is doing, and everyone else. When I got myself into like a county setup and on that pathway towards a professional contract, I thought, well, this is surely how everyone's thinking. Like, surely everyone's out running late at night or doing extra training sessions, and that was just my mentality. I thought, well, if they're going to be doing stuff like that, I need to do more, because I knew I had my condition. Subconsciously, I knew I had my condition. I knew that it was a perceived weakness. So I kind of thought, well, if my whole thing was if someone is doing X amount and I'm competing with them, I need to do 3 times more than that because I'm behind the 8 ball. Like, my body is behind the 8 ball. I'm asking my body to do something that it's not designed. It's going to take me longer to learn something. Technically, it usually took me a little bit longer to like repeat something, and something like bowling in cricket is very repetitive. The skill level, you have to repeat the same skills, but so to ingrain that into my body and my mind, it took me a little bit longer. So, but I think from the motivation side, I assumed everyone else was thinking like that. I didn't think that I was any different, to be fair. So yeah, but now it's different. Now it is different. Now I've realised it was a lot different. My body awareness is a lot different, and I can feel that my body is different. The symmetry is not there because I'm developed on one side and underdeveloped on another. And especially when you do something like yoga now, that it brings huge amounts of body awareness. I just didn't have that when I was a kid.
And so, staying with you as a kid and staying with this motivation piece, would you say the motivation was a combination of something that was inborn, it was within you, and as a consequence of the condition that you had? Do you think it was, and I know these kind of questions are quite difficult to answer, aren't they? But would you say it was a combination? Or actually, if you reflect back, would you say that, yes, I was motivated because I knew that my condition held me back slightly and I had to do more, but also I had a lot of inborn motivation as well. I was naturally quite a motivated person.
I don't know. Like, a lot of it nothing really that springs to mind came from like my parents or anything like that. But them saying like, you are going to be a professional cricketer, like you've got this born in you. Like, nothing like that. A big element of my talks is I hugely believe hard work conquers talent. I don't believe in the word talent. I believe I had an ability to do something, and I just explored it, and I really, really explored it. And I funny enough, the motivation that I kind of gave myself was finding other people who were similar in my situation. And what I mean was, could I find like an underdog that had achieved greatness? So around the time when I was growing up, Adidas came out with an Impossible is Nothing campaign. And it was a huge campaign they did for years. And there were people like Lionel Messi was coming up. He was playing for Argentina. He just got on the Argentinian side, and the big story about how his hormone imbalance hadn't allowed him to grow, and he learned to play football on the floor, so that's how he was so good with the ball at his feet. Jonah Lomu was one where he'd overcome diabetes. It was diabetes, wasn't it?
You've caught me out there. It was a kidney problem.
Yeah, so it was Jonah Lomu who'd overcome that. And then, funny enough, then Nike caught up with them and started doing some adverts as well. And weirdly, whenever I do a talk, I get a lot of people ask me in conversation, like, who were your idols? Who were people that you were aspiring to be like when you were younger? And the two answers, the two people I give, make everyone laugh, because the two athletes that I used to look up to were Lance Armstrong and Oscar Pistorius.
Right. Okay.
And I kind of say, look, Lance Armstrong, I've barred him because obviously you cheat, that's it, it's unforgivable in what you achieve in a sport like that. But however, like what he did for cancer patients around the world, raising that millions of pounds, was incredible that side, but he cheated at sport. Oscar Pistorius, unforgivable what he did. But it doesn't actually change what he did on the track. It doesn't change what he did as an athlete. He was an athlete. To see a guy running without legs, with guys with legs, was a huge motivator for me. Like watching this guy who had a physical disability that you could see, and he was running with fully able-bodied athletes. And I would see something like that as a youngster and go, if someone can do something like that, then I can play cricket with my condition. No matter how hard it is, no matter how much my body hurts, and no matter how tough it is for me to actually get the technique that I need to do this, I can achieve it, because someone else has found a way to do something as incredible as that. I can do something to achieve this incredible story. And the motivation then became me kind of telling myself this story. I would tell myself the story like almost as if I was writing an article about it, like kid with rare condition becomes professional cricketer, and almost like wrote the story that eventually got told. Because again, I'm a huge believer in, if you can see something and you can understand it, you can achieve it. Like if you can really see it, and you constantly affirm it, and you repeat it over in your mind, and you take the steps to get there, you can achieve it as long as you can see it.
There's some really fascinating gold dust in what you've just said over the last couple of minutes. I'm going to put my psychologist's cap on for a second here, if you don't mind, Lewis. So, one of the world's most influential psychologists is a guy called Albert Bandura, who's now in his 90s. I mean, he would literally be in your top 5 psychologists of modern times, and he developed several theories, but one of them was the theory of self-efficacy, and self-efficacy being I believe I have the skills to accomplish what I want to achieve. It's in essence a theory of self-belief. And one of the things he talks about 4 sources of self-belief. He talks about mastery experiences, as in when I've done it before, I know I can do it again. He talks about verbal persuasion. He talks about emotional and physiological states, and I'll go into that in another podcast. But the thing you said there, I think it's really interesting, and that's why I wanted to keep on this motivational theme, is that the second source, he said, of self-efficacy, of self-belief, is vicarious experience. So that's a posh term for when I see others achieve, I know, I believe that I can achieve. And often that source of confidence has to come from others who are in a similar situation, or that becomes more powerful. So as you've said there with Jonah Lomu, and I've actually just Googled it, Jonah Lomu had something called nephrotic syndrome, which was a serious kidney disorder. And you mentioned Lionel Messi with his growth hormone challenge. And for you as a young aspiring cricketer, to be able to look at these other people and say, well, they've achieved, they've accomplished, irrespective of these challenges, they've overcome these challenges, and that's an enormously powerful thing you did back then. And I think young people who, whether they have a specific challenge, physical challenge, or mental challenge, or any other challenge they might have, a social deprivation challenge, there is often examples out there of people who have overcome these challenges and gone on to succeed in one way or another. So I think that's a really powerful story. I also love the way you said, I wrote an article in my mind. I dictated my story. In terms of what that story looked like, was it just kind of you pictured yourself playing cricket at a professional level at Lords and at the Oval, which for people who don't know cricket, those would be the two main cricket grounds in London. Did you do that, or was it in more detail?
No, do you know what? Even thinking about it, I didn't really visualise almost playing a game. I visualised just merely like putting the shirt on. Like that was literally it. Like receiving my cap and receiving my shirt that would have my name on it. Funny enough, I spoke about this for like the first time the other day in a coffee meeting. It just came out, this story that I told someone, and they were talking about like I'd explored this whole conversation of seeing something to achieve it. And I can really remember a part of what I would do was when I was living at parents' house, and it was like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm at the front door, and I've put my running shoes on, and I'm just about to go for a run because I knew I needed to go for a run because that was going to make me fitter. I was going to be able to bowl more. It was one little step in the right direction to become a professional. Like this was something I needed to do, and I hadn't done it. I'd been at school all day, and for whatever reason, I needed to do it to tick it off on my list of this little check that I needed to do to move in the right direction. So I'm standing at the front door, I'm about to go out, it's cold, it's wintry, it's dark, and my mum just comes past and, where the hell are you going? Like, what are you doing? I go, I've got to go do this run. And I shot off out in the village and ran down the next town, and I did my usual route. And coming back, literally as you come back towards the house, the last 100 metres of this run is a hill, and I come to this hill, and the whole, you're getting to the end, you go, Lou, just walk it, you're done, like, you've done enough, like, just walk it. And I get to the bottom of that hill and just go, everyone that I'm competing against is not doing this run. Like, everyone that I'm trying to overcome and everyone that I'm trying to sort of work my way around, they're not doing this run. And I am. This 100 metres, literally, I stop at the top of the hill. And I would visualise right then signing a contract. I'd visualise me being handed a contract in a meeting and being told that you're a professional. Like, that was what I visualised. And every time I got to that hill, that's what I visualised. And I would sprint up the hill to finish in like almost Rocky style, and then get to the top of the hill. And that's it. That's when I'd finish my run. And I would do that over and over again. And then I was 15, 16, so it wasn't until 4 years later that it actually became a reality, that I actually sit there with the coach that I visualised, who would hand it to me and hands me a contract, and I sign it. And that was it. That was, that was a small snippet, but there was 1,000,001 little stories like that along the way that all built up. But that was a really vivid one that I just suddenly came out in this coffee meeting that I was having the other day, and I thought, wow, it's actually a really powerful story. It's really what I did. I really visualised, and I even use that now in creating my own business. Like, I really truly believe, like, if I can see what it looks like, I can achieve it, as long as I put the work in towards it, those little steps towards it.
And I think, again, my brain is whirring here. There's so many little golden nuggets here with relation to what we like to think we know about sports psychology and development and performance in sport. So what I hear you saying is you got to the bottom of that hill, and there are your thoughts. And the way I try to articulate the difference between thoughts and self-talk is that your thoughts tend to happen to you. They just pop into your head. They're kind of automatic. And then you've got your self-talk, which is more a constructed thing. You do your self-talk. And it sounds to me like you got to the bottom of the hill, and just by picturing this contract and imagining, using your imagination to picture your future, a successful future, drove your self-talk. No, come on, nobody else is doing this. Just kick on up this hill. So you spoke back to your thoughts, your negative thoughts, if you like, and it enabled you to take action and complete the task of getting up the hill. And as you've kind of said there, I did this 1,000,001 times. So I used my picturing, my visualization of this great future, drive my self-talk, take action, and I was doing this all the time. Would that be a kind of a fair way to articulate what you were doing?
Yeah. I think, like you said, like thoughts that pop into your mind are real quick, and as much as some of those thoughts would have been, stop, don't go up the hill, stay where you are, like walk. And all of those thoughts, they pop in literally seconds, and they're the ones that are screaming at you as well. They're the ones that are loud.
Yes.
But I don't know. It's the ability to kind of see the logic as well, and see the future in the current moment that you're in, and that's a real big challenge in the world we live in. Anyway, that's a real big challenge. To how I spoke about it with working with young kids. How do you get a young kid working their way to see out of their current environment in which they're in and start to look towards the future? So, I think I just managed to really see it, and I don't know. Another motivator for me was, I always said if I never was going to be a cricketer, I would have tried to go into the Marines, and I loved military films and war films that were like inspirational and how people kind of real underdog stories anyway. But I think that really ingrained me, like, work hard now and sort of reap the benefit in the future. That was, if I put in the base work now, then when I'm 25, 30, 35, it'll be there for me to kind of rely on. It'll be something for me to fall back on. I won't be sort of searching for hard work later on in life. I would have built up a base, a foundation of hard work that I can, should something happen and I need to rely on that. And it did. I had injuries when I was playing, and that base of hard work gave me a foundation to work upon. There's loads of different little motivations for me. But I think fundamentally, I knew my body, because everything that I did, a lot of the time, I was always renowned for physically working myself hard, and I was told I was driven, even from a young kid. Like, people would say, "Oh, you're very driven," but the one thing that people would never say is you're talented or you're a good cricketer. That used to annoy me really a lot, because I was like, I'm working so hard to be a good bowler, and no one's saying I'm a good bowler, but I just kind of go, right, okay, let's just be driven, just work hard. And a lot of that hard work was towards my physical body, was towards making myself fit, because I knew if my body failed me, then I wouldn't be able to do the job. But also I needed my body to work harder, because I was asking it so much to do a job that it wasn't designed for. The human body in general is not designed to do bowling in cricket. It's such a tough job biomechanically. So to then take parts of your body away, like this pec and ribs, and imbalance it so much, it was really, really asking a lot of it. So all the hard work I did was towards being the fittest player, and I achieved that. Funnily enough, another visualization I had was when I was in the gym. They used to have this fitness board chart of all the fitness results of the pros, and when I was a young kid, sort of about 15, 16 again, and I had a really bad back injury when I was 16. I didn't play cricket for 2 years, and I was in that gym continuously trying to work on my body, because I said, my body's failed me, I don't want that to happen again. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to be the fittest player on this team. Like, that chart that's there in 3, 4, 5 years' time, I want to be literally at the top of that. I want to be the person that everyone's chasing for fitness levels, because if I'm up there, the coaches can't turn to me and say, we're not going to play you because your body, because your condition. I wanted them to turn around and say, we can't play you because your cricket isn't there yet, like your skill level's not there yet. I could deal with that, but something would have really torn me apart was if they said your body's just not good enough, like your body you're not worthy enough physically to play this sport. So I was like, right, I'm going to be the top of that list, and they can't turn around to me and say you're not fit enough, because I can just go, no, I am the fittest here. And I did that. I eventually became the fittest player. I set all the standards for fitness in the team, and that was my thing. Like, I prided myself on my physicality, even though physically I was less than everyone else. That was what I really was proud of as well.
And what motivated you more? Was it the past or was it the future? And by that I mean, you've articulated there, I will not fail through poor physicality, through a body that isn't good enough for cricket. So for me, that's the future. The future is cricket. I will not fail because of my body. Or was it more the past, working away from the challenges that you have with your body? I won't let the challenge of my body hold me back. Was it the drive to be a cricketer? physically, or was it getting away from the Poland syndrome that you were born with?
I think both. Really, it really depended. When I was there, say I was working away at something, whether it's skill wise or physically in the gym, there would always be an element that my body would really, really annoy me. Like, I can't physically get my arm up long enough to hold my technique, and part of finding a way then was right, I can't get my right shoulder up, so I need to move my left shoulder back, and I need to work the opposites better, and finding my own unique way of doing it. And that whole time that something like that was happening, or just doing a press up, something simple, when my body would tell me, this is hard work for you, Lou, you're struggling. Those were the moments where I was like, no, these are the times where I need to overcome this. I need to keep repeating. I need to keep going, because the goal is to be a professional cricketer. I think I would use the past or the idea of my condition to leapfrog me into the future, to motivate me in that moment, and go, okay, this may hurt, this may suck, this may be frustrating, this is going to be very annoying, but it's something you need to get to where you want to go. And as much as I don't like, obviously, being a yoga teacher now, the whole stoic way in which sport can be done, and it can be very intense and military, you need elements of that as a youngster. The only thing I would say nowadays is you just need to package it better. But you need it. You can't go into a professional sport and say, give an example of me being in the gym with my condition, I'm trying to work and physically improve my body. You need to have an element of pain in order to improve, and you need that element to happen. But how much and how intense and how controlled that environment is crucial now. But I couldn't go in there and go, if I'd gone in there and gone, this is not working, my condition's playing up, and okay, wipe my hands and walk out and go, I can't do that because my condition, I would never have been a professional cricketer. I would have never made it, because I needed it. I needed to be like that. I needed to have that attitude. And then it held me massively, and it translated so much more into just physicality, mental resilience. It is what I would do a job called the night watchman job in cricket, which was, for anyone who's a cricket fan will know what it is, but non-cricket fans, it's a role where at the end of a day, the batsman that will go out and bat, you as a lower order batsman, a sort of sacrificial lamb, you would go in to face the fast bowlers in the evening so that the best batsman didn't get out. But that job, when you're a bowler, sucks, because they're either trying to hit you in the head, hit you on the toes, and try and hit you. And obviously, with a ball coming at 80, 90 mile an hour, it's rock solid and no rib cage to protect your lung, that's a daunting prospect. But I put my hand up for that, because I was like, if I can do the bravest job, if I can do the toughest job in this sport, or the least comfortable job, then everything else will be okay. And that mentality that I got there, I can even see that came from hours in the gym, hours in the training facilities, hours in the nets of working through really uncomfortable situations mentally, overcoming the mental struggle of, my condition is annoying me today and it's not where I want to be, and why can't I be like everyone else? Why can't this condition just not be here? And to then sort of go, okay, all right, we can't change this. I can't change my condition. How can I find my own way to work around it? And I'm sitting in a corner and tearing my hair out, but it was what I needed. It's what you needed to grow. It's part of the growth, and I think those at times gave me such strength for it.
Piecing a lot of what you've said together, the picturing, the visualization of the future, desirable future, away from the past, combined with that self-talk, or driving that self-talk to carry on, to take action, to drive yourself forward, helped you in the gym, helped you, drove you through the feeling of an uncomfortable feeling in the gym, in the nets. it drove you to practice, and then subsequently when you had tough challenges within a game in cricket, like being the night watchman, where that ball is, that rock solid ball is coming at you at 80 miles an hour, and they're aiming, as you say, for your head, they're kind of body lining it. That helps you deal with those situations. But when you go back to the mechanics, you were able to get the right pictures, use the right self-talk, experience driving yourself through tough moments, and that helped you in the real small, challenging moments in the game.
Yeah, it's amazing how at the time you don't see it. You don't see that resilience being built up. But I think when I got into the professional game eventually, and those moments, those real uncomfortable moments in the game, and you deal with them okay, and a lot of people that you may speak to, someone else who doesn't play professional sport, and you describe the scenario you faced, and you're like, they will say, how the hell did you deal with that? And you go, well, essentially, you're like, I don't know, but actually you know where it came from, and you understand where it came from because it was something that was done years ago.
I loved what you said about, when you referred to the military element of developing as a youngster, the stoicism, and that you feel that there has to be a part of that, but that needs to be packaged better. I love that. I want to return to that, and in a few minutes I want to talk about the technical side of things. But just one last question on the motivational side of things. You said a really interesting thing about, if cricket didn't work out, you wanted to go into the Royal Marines. Do you think having an alternative plan helped you? I mean, you eventually went on to become a professional cricketer, but do you think having that alternative reinforced cricket as a career, helped you have a career in cricket, because that alternative plan gave you options related to what you were doing anyway?
Yeah, well, to be fair, like military was, being a Marine, like that kind of came from the whole, I think everything you see in the Marines is people being physically brutalised by the sergeants and them just working hard. And that's what I saw. I was like, I love that idea of how hard they work, and they're pushing their body to the limits, and that's what I really loved about that whole idea, because kind of just quickly nipping back was that whole idea of, I loved being able to push my condition to its limit, to find that edge of where I teetered with injury, and I did get injured a lot because I pushed that limit too hard. But that's what I loved about Marines. I just saw them pushing limits, and I think for it to be it wasn't really a career choice. I wasn't literally thinking like, if cricket fails, I'm going to the military. I'd actually lined up to go to university and study sports science, and but funny enough, like I just looked at it and was like, I don't want to be doing that. Like I don't want to be going. Even though university looked fun, and the Marines looks like it would be tough work, and I like tough work, and I don't want to do that. Like I want to play cricket. I want to write that article that I'm visualising in my mind. Like that's what I want to hear. I don't want that article to be young boy with Poland syndrome gives up at last hurdle. Like doesn't work hard enough. I just was so adamant that if I worked hard enough and I worked smart enough, that it would come. Like it would really, really come, and it did. It actually came true, and I think it's my proudest moment of my career in all the games I played was just the day I was told I'd become a professional cricketer. That one day, because it wasn't like people saw a 6-month transformation of me becoming an out of nowhere kid with no contract, just working in a smoked salmon factory at the time, and was just running around a beat up Fiesta, and then suddenly was propelled in 6 months from out of nowhere into starting my first ever first class game and signing a contract, and I came out of nowhere. But I look at it, and that's what everyone saw, which looked crazy, but for me, that started when I was 14, and there was 6 years leading up to that moment that were hell and tough and amazing, and all these different moments of like spending 2 years not playing the sport, doubting whether I would ever play it, and that was more the motivation than having university in the background. Yes, that was nice, and I thought, okay, I can do that if it doesn't work out, but I'm going to make sure that I put everything, turn over every stone to make this happen.
You can have all the motivation in the world, you can have the mental skills to sustain that motivation, but if you don't have the whether you call them technical skills or the skill set, the domain specific skill set for your sport, then you're not going to be a professional. You mentioned earlier, you were a bowler as a cricketer. In cricket, you can be specialise in bowling or batting, or you can have all-rounders. You were a bowler, and you said the human body is not designed biomechanically to bowl. And obviously, you had an extra challenge with having no pectoral muscles and missing ribs. And you said there was often a physical annoyance. So how did you develop the skills to become a top-class bowler? What did you have to do? What was different for you?
Firstly, I looked at someone who had the same skill set as me. So luckily at Sussex, we had a very good... I was a left-arm bowler because my right side is so weak. I ended up left-handed. And we at Sussex had this... guy called Jason Lurie. He looked like me, had a shaven head, and he bowled like me. And I actually kind of watched him as a youngster. And my dad would always kind of like point him out a little bit more and say, "Look, he does what you do. You're a left armer. He's left armer. Watch him." And that's how I watched him. And I think I learned a little bit from his just looking at his technique, and that's kind of things I took as a kid. But yeah, as I kind of grew up, technically, I realised my body couldn't do certain things with the sport. I remember very, very vividly going to a cricket camp. I was about 9 years old, and I went to this cricket camp that loads happen around the country. And they brought this funny enough, he ended up being my coach when I was a pro. And he came, and he was one of the old cricketers at Sussex. And he turned up and he said, "Right, you're going to play this shot with one hand. And you've got to use your top hand when you bat." And I was left-handed. My top hand was my right hand, my weakest hand. He's like, "Hold it up, hold the bat up." And I'm literally like straining to hold this bat up. Like I couldn't physically do it, like because my right side was so weak. Just couldn't hold this bat up. And I'm like aching in my side and like sweating, and eventually my arm just falls, and I couldn't do it compared to everyone. That was one of the moments where my parents remembered, and I was only 9, they were like, "You nearly stopped playing cricket there that day because you physically couldn't do something and you nearly fell away from it." But after that, it was, I don't know whether I don't think I was smart enough as a 10-year-old to do this, but I would just find my own way of doing things. Now, if my top hand was my weakest hand, I was like, well, I don't play cricket with one hand, I'm going to play with two, so I'm going to make sure my left hand's really strong. And I'm going to use my left arm to do it. And then that grew to like when I was a bowler. Your front arm when you bowl is a really important arm for direction of where you bowl the ball. So if you think about throwing a ball, if you don't pick up your front arm and point your front arm to where you want to throw, it makes actually directing the throw that you're doing. Same in bowling. If you can't point your front arm towards where you want to go, it makes it a lot harder. But that was a challenge in itself because my right arm again is physically weaker. The pec, which is a huge muscle for stabilising the shoulder joint, is not there. It's just not there. I'm asking shoulder muscles to do that. So they fatigue. They get stronger but fatigue quicker and ache more. And I would try and repeat this, and my coaches would say, "Your front arm's dropping, your front arm's dropping." I'm like, I know. It wasn't until this one day where I'd taken myself away. I took like a bag of cricket balls, and I was in this net, and I was bowling away on my own, and no one was around, and I was trying to repeat a skill that I just recently learned in a training session, and I was like, "This I need to repeat because this will make me a good bowler," but I couldn't do it. My arm was fatiguing, so I remember it really well that I said, "Well, if I can't bring my front arm forward enough, and I can't get it up there with just using my right arm. Why don't I actually just use my left side? Why don't I use my strong side to help me out? And that technique transpired into being take my left shoulder back. So if you think about just taking your left shoulder back, your right shoulder comes forward, and that massively helped. So when I bowl now, cock my left shoulder back, that brings my right shoulder forward. I'm using my left side to help out my right side. And that was a massive learner for me, like really using what you have and not focusing on what you don't have. I could have beaten myself up for years by just going, my right side isn't strong enough, and like I'm going to lift as many weights to make my right side strong enough. But it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered because eventually I would have fatigued. It would have been tough. It wouldn't have worked. And I decided to use what I had. I decided to use my strong side to help my weaker side. And I did that in everything. I did that in everything from batting. If it meant that my top arm was weak, I would help it with my bottom arm, and I use my left hand to guide it, to control it better. And that was how I kind of learned those sort of skills. Just really focusing on what I had and what I could use, and develop them to become even better. Like work them become like super strengths.
Given that experience, I worked on my way of doing things, what I saw and what I could physically do. If you were coaching cricket now, if you were a sports coach, would that experience influence the way you coach?
Yeah, it does. It does when I coached kids. I went out to Australia for a training camp, and a coach out there said something that massively helped me was he coached in a style where he looked at the outcome and worked his way back. So in cricket, there's 1,000,001 techniques, and I could have sat there and looked at loads of different techniques of other cricketers and thought how it works, and I would use other cricketers' techniques and kind of take snippets from it and see if it would work for me and work there. But coaching kids now, I look at the outcome. I look at if you've got a kid who is a batsman and he looks horrible, like his technique may look disgraceful, like, and so non-traditional. But if every ball that he's hitting is coming out the middle of the bat and everything is going along the floor and everything is immaculate and he's fundamentally got a lot of things right, let him be. Like, that's his technique. That's what he's learned. I don't need to try and teach that kid to bat like an England pro who's got a certain brilliant, like, beautiful technique that comes out of the textbook. There is no one way, and it's a great analogy for success. Like, there is no one way to accept success. Like, you look at even the England team that plays now, none of those guys bat the same. None of those guys have the same technique. They have principles in which they use that are kind of like tactic driven. So they'll leave the ball in certain areas, whatever. But their fundamental technique, how they look, is so different. They're each individuals, but their success, they're in the England team. They're creating success. They're excellence. They're at the top end of their sport. You don't have to look one certain way. So as soon as I saw that, I loved seeing cricketers growing up who had these really funky techniques, and I just thought, well, they're doing it that way. Why can't I do it my way, or whatever it means? And even if a coach is trying to give me advice on how to be more traditionally technically sound, I would listen and take it on and go, that's cool. And I'd also look at the coach and think, how adaptive are they? Is that coach very adaptive? Are they saying that same message to every cricketer? My first coach was like that. He would say the same message to pretty much most bowlers because he was giving the advice of what he experienced. Whereas my second bowling coach was brilliant. He was really adaptive. Like, he would come to every bowler, and every bowler was unique. It was a completely different ball game with every single person, and each bowler had different like fallbacks that they would go to, like little home base key phrases or cues, whatever it was for them, and he would sort those out for each bowler. And it was a really adaptable process, and that's how I would coach now. I would look at every individual and go, right, what's the outcome? Is the outcome good at the moment? Or is it good enough? And then how can we kind of tweak the technique that they've got and let them play around with it. Let them play around with it and see. The playing is the highest form of research.
So what I hear you say is, as a coach, if we've got a continuum from directive to non-directive, you'd be on the non-directive side of things, there would be a framework there. You would look at the outcome and you would ask questions around that outcome, and you would see the cricket nets, the cricket pitch as a laboratory for a place for players to explore technique, and you would be a guide, in essence, is what you'd say.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting dynamic. It's for me, it's quite challenging for coaches, because I think, and I empathise with that approach. That would be, if I went back to golf coaching, that would be the approach I would take. I think the challenge comes, Lewis, when challenge one is looking at the aesthetics and not allowing that inner voice to take over and say, "Oh, that looks ugly, I need to shift that." Because I think we as coaches are so socially driven to look at aesthetics at times, and what we experienced growing up. You mentioned there that you had a coach that would just coach in the way in which he experienced the game.
I think sport is crying out for coaches to be like that, though, like for them to not conform. I think it's just crying out for people to do things unconventionally and trust in it, like really, really trust in it. I love the book Legacy about the All Blacks, and it's a great book about how they created their ethos for the All Blacks rugby team, and how pretty much anyone in the world knows the ethos of the All Blacks right now, and what the shirt means to an individual, but how that was created, but the buy-in in which it got, and the route in which those initial coaches took was so unique to the world. But they stuck by it, they continued by it, they stayed by it, and they trusted it, and they believed in it. And if you're convicted in your belief in whatever you're delivering, there'll be success in it. And it's only when that, I think your ego as a coach, or the idea of what you need to conform to and what it looks like, the aesthetics of how it needs to look, like you said, that creeps in. And if you even give that a little bit of time and a little bit of thought, it can overwhelm, and it will take over, and suddenly everything will change.
I think the other challenge for a coach is that if they're in that development space and they've got young players who want to explore being the best that they can be, it's brave to let a player continue with a technique that looks different and may be defined as biomechanically not optimal. And it's that having that bravery to step back and allow the player to develop within their own framework, within their own how they perceive the world around them, and I think that takes incredible bravery for a coach.
Yeah, I love seeing stuff like that. I love seeing coaches do that. I think it is brave. So
just dwelling on that technical piece still. So you would have some models, you would watch people, you would self-explore, you would figure things out for yourself. Specifically, what you mentioned your left shoulder. Was there anything else there you had to play around with your bowling action at all? Was there any time that you came up against a plateau with your skill development, with your technique, that you had to fight your way through? Or were there numerous occasions when that happened?
Yeah, there were. Yeah, because I got injured quite a lot, and injury fundamentally ended my career. When I was 16, I got a stress fracture in my back, and even as a left-arm bowler, like, that's a rite of passage. Apparently, like, it's a thing that you have to have, like, a stress fracture in your back, because again, the biomechanics of bowling and left-arm bowling, you twist your body so much more in these awkward positions, and the plateaus that I would face would be injuries. So they would be, whether it was soft tissue, but fundamentally like a structural injury, like my back, I had to readjust my technique to look after my back. I had to change my technique to look after my back. And I remember coming back from my first back injury, and I was a swing bowler. Like my thing was I didn't have pace, but I had good skill with being able to swing the ball in the air. And that was something that came from like wrist position and things like that. And that was a big thing that I would work on, like my skills out of my hand. Like, could I deceive batsmen with my skill levels, and that was something I realised I wasn't going to be a massively fast bowler, but I could have good skill. And when I got injured and I came back, I had a more upright technique, essentially, and I had to adjust that. I lost my swing. I lost my swing suddenly. Like, I just stopped swinging the ball, and I was like, "Oh God, what the hell?" And I was 18, and I was due to go to university, and it was almost kind of like, "Look, you need to swing the ball again. You need to learn how to swing the ball again, or your career, you're not going to happen." And I remember I deferred university, and I decided to go away to Australia to go on a training academy. And my main goal, like top of my list, was learn to swing the ball again. Like, come back having swung the ball. And even though I was going out to Australia where the ball doesn't swing very much, like that's an area in the world where the ball doesn't swing, I was asking quite a lot. So before I went away, I found as many different techniques that I could find that were around how to swing the ball, and I went out there and just tried every single one and just played around with each one. I'd do these ridiculous things. I'd have like gloves on my hands and like turn my hand upside down when I'm running in, and like have the ball at different angles. And eventually, just one day, like this ball came out of my hand and it absolutely pooped like a boomerang. And I was like, okay, something's happened there. Can I do it again? Like, I tried and found it, and that was it. Then it just worked, and that changed over time. But it just gave me, like this framework of how I knew I could swing the ball. And yeah, it was a quick technical change, but every year something technically was different because I was trying to develop new skills. I would then, once I'd nailed down my in-swinger, I would want to bowl one that didn't swing, and how could I do that without the batsman seeing it? So I fundamentally bowled with two balls, one that swung, one that didn't, but I needed them to look pretty much identical, because if they can look identical, it's much harder for the batsman to just figure out which one's which. And that was it. I had those, and then I developed like a knuckle ball and slower balls and cutters and things that you like roll in the wrists, and I would do that. And the way I would actually train to do that was we were only given 24 balls every training session to bowl because we had to manage our bodies. So you had 24 balls to practice and develop your skill. As a professional, I'd done a lot of work as a kid, but when you're a professional, it's all about maintaining your body, being able to be fit and ready to go and play. But what that doesn't give you is it doesn't give you much playtime to increase your skill level. When you're trying to manage your body and make sure your body doesn't get damaged because the practice that you're doing is damaging to your body, you have to limit it. You have to limit the amount of practice you do if it's damaging your body. So 24 balls we'd have in training, and I thought, how the hell am I going to practice a new skill with 24 balls? I'd probably use 24 balls to try and bowl my best ball. But I would split it. I'd do 6 balls. The first 6 would be me as my best ball, like my best in-swinging ball. That's where I'd bowl. And then the next 12 was playtime. And then I'd finish with like affirming my best ball. I'd bowl the six that I bowled at the beginning, I'd bowl at the end. And that was it. You get 12 balls to like play around and improve. And it took time. So then it was like, how many training sessions can you get? You need to do more training sessions and more 24 balls. But it was a real cat and mouse with your body at the end of the day. But yeah, like playing around and developing that way, but keeping it quite confined as well. That's making sure you've got your base strength, I guess is the best way to describe it. I've got my strongest ball as my in-swinger, so I need to make sure that is solid.
It sounds like you took real ownership of your skill development. Last question on cricket and your experiences in cricket and developing yourself as a cricketer. You only had 24 balls to bowl in a training session, in a practice session. How would you explain away a poor practice session? How would you deal with that? What story would you weave in your mind?
A lot of people will come away and look at a practice session and say, like, I bowled 24 balls and they were all hitting the side netting and it was awful. But if you went into that training session with a plan to explore, like the 24 balls, it gave you clarity. That's the one thing it did give you. It gave you such clarity, and it gave every single ball value. You weren't like being on a driving range and going, right, I've got 100 balls here, I'm just going to hit every single one as far as I can. Like, that's not a structured training session. You can break each 100 balls down into 10. that's what it gave you. It gave you huge clarity on what it was, and I loved clarity. Everyone loves clarity. And could go in and go, like I said, first 6 balls, I'm going to try and bowl my best ball. Those first 6 balls may be absolutely awful, but I'm going to try it, and that's the skill that I'm working on. Then the next 12, I'm not going to try and recorrect the 6 that I've bowled there. I'm going to play around with something new. Again, it could be awful. It could look terrible. But then the last 6, I can try and recorrect the initial skill that I was trying to achieve, which was my best ball. And again, those may be awful. But the whole training session may have been an absolute car crash. But I went into it with a clarity of like what the session looked like. I didn't do it, and it just meant that there was something for me to do the next session to try and correct it. I could learn from not doing it right, essentially. I could go and look at it. But if I went into that training session and just went 24 balls, I bowled okay, but I've not really checked anything off. I don't really know what I've done. I can't really tell you what I bowled. I can't really... there was no structure to it. Yeah, that's a lesser practice, in my opinion, because you're massively going through the motions. You're not improving. Those 24 balls, yes, there's only 24 balls, but they're hugely valuable for your development. So can you use them? And that's when eventually my practice changed from going and like overworking in the gym and overworking in the nets to like less is more. Like less is more. And you hear it all the time that a lot of athletes, when they get to a certain part of their career, go, "Oh, I realise less is more." And you're like, yeah, it is. But it's a real tough one. I think that middle period of your career is where that happens, because you need that build-up of continuous training as a youngster, and you need that background, that foundation. If you did less is more when you were a youngster, you actually don't even do enough work to even get to the professional level. I don't think. I think you do need to have a huge amount of work as a youngster, then be smart in the middle period, and then kind of reap the benefits when you've got all the experience later part of life. So yeah, when you get that short training session, I think a clear training session when you go into it, that's the best value you can get out of it.
Quality over quantity. You mentioned young aspiring competitors, sports competitors, and the importance of building up the hours and putting the work in, and you've kind of alluded to that across this conversation. You're now a yoga teacher, you're a mentor. We'll come on to the yoga in a second, but in terms of the mentoring you're doing to help young people grow in the sports space, tell us a little bit about that.
So I got contacted by a group of guys who run a project called the True Athlete Project, and it's a much more holistic way of approaching athlete development. So we look at really the whole overall experience of being a young and upcoming athlete. So not just even the sport, like the young lad that I mentor as a fencer. I don't know anything about fencing, but it's not about that. It's about giving him someone to talk to that is not in the environment that he's in, and even like parents, because they're in that environment that he's in. That's like the bubble that he's in. Getting him out of his bubble, getting him to talk to someone who's been into a professional sport environment, gone through many different challenges, gone through the ups and downs of whatever sport they're playing and how they dealt with it. Because when you can talk to someone outside of your own bubble, there's that element of no judgment. And I think when you have, even if it is your parents, you still feel like there will be a motive from their point, or like there's their own thoughts, their own judgments on what they think. And yeah, when you've got someone that's totally neutral, it's much nicer. And then the curriculum around what the project's based around is creating really all-round human beings, fundamentally, realising not only your interaction within your sport, with yourself, but also the environment, your community, and all those different things that being an athlete is all about. So it's a massively broad spectrum of things, but it's really, I look at it and think it would have been great to have something like that when I was a youngster, because it just gives you someone to soundboard things off, to talk about things, and it's really, really important with the world we live in now, with social media and things like that. And I don't know what it would be like growing up as an athlete. Back when I was growing up, if I had all this social media and constant access to the insights and lives of of professional athletes and the idea of what success looks like and what your own success is looking like. If you've got someone that's been there, done it, and actually gone from the bottom rung all the way to the top rung, that you can really find out what it's all about, that's massively important and valuable.
You mentioned earlier that the development of young people within sport needs to be packaged better. And you said there that as a mentor, I'm helping young people, explore their world a little bit more, have other things. Do you think that an aspiring young competitor, perhaps a young competitor who wants to explore how good he or she can be, do you think there's room for that balance? Because you've also mentioned the importance of having that stoic approach and being dedicated to your sport. Do you think there's room for balance?
Yeah, it's really tough. Like being a yoga teacher, I'm constantly telling people to slow down and really look after yourselves. And then on the other hand, I'm saying, well, you need to put in the hard work, and you need to pain is like a part of the process. So it's it can look contradictory, but that's the world of sport. And also, do you know what? Sport is business, and business is sport, and life is sport, and it all transfers so well. I think there is the whole idea of packaging it better is just trying to open their eyes. And I alluded to how do you get young people to think out of the environment that they're currently in and look years ahead. I think we'd spoken about Roger Federer before we started the podcast, and how he was very smart about how he approached his sport, and now he's choosing his events that he does now because he wants longevity for his body because he realises he's older. But when he was younger, he would do things based around the longevity of his sport. That's a very smart way of thinking, and only a few people will think like that. So how do you get young people to think like that? Because at the moment they will see they have such access to the lives of professional athletes now. They're looking at the end success, and they're looking at it going, that's what I want, and that's what I need. But a lot of the messages we see around are like self-care and look after yourself. But if you want that success, whether it's in sport, business, life, there is an element that you're going to have to go through some ups and downs, and it's not going to look pretty for a long time before you actually reach this element, whatever success it looks like for you, of what you're seeing on social media, the highlight reels that you see. And it is a mixed message, but I think it really, the whole idea that I said about having that foundation of hard work to fall back on when you're older or middle-aged, whenever you hit a barrier, if you have that element of hard work, that resilience that you've built up. And resilience can just be like choosing the right food rather than the wrong food. It can be going and doing that run when you didn't want to do it, or just doing something at the moment when you kind of don't want to do it and all the voices are screaming, don't do it, to actually put yourself through it and be resilient and actually go and do that scenario, whatever it is. And that builds a resilience up over a long period of time that you can fall back on. I now, starting my own business, I'm now relying on that resilience that I had. I kind of lost my way for a bit, having come out of my sport. I lost my way, and I'm now having to retune myself back into that resilience that I built and actually tap into it a bit more. But I'm so thankful that I have it, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to kind of try and build something big. And that's what I really think is important as well, just having that foundation.
I don't want to conflate resilience with confidence here, but I find myself having these conversations, Lewis, with young competitors, in terms of suggesting or having a conversation around, having time out, R&R, rest and recuperation, having a little bit more balance, because there's always got to be time. If you've got ambition in sport, if you've got ambition in anything, of course you've got to be dedicated, of course you've got to be committed. But you've also got to have, in my opinion, something else, or other things, or periods of R&R, because I think you said being resilient can be choosing the right diet, choosing the right nutrition at any given moment rather than wrong. And I think it's the same with volume of practice. I find that a lot of young competitors will practice when they don't need to out of panic, out of a lack of confidence. They'll get tense and anxious, and I remember doing this myself. I've got to beat balls, I've got to hit balls, I've got to hit balls, I've got to practice, and I think it's very rife in the world of golf, but across all sports. So I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Well, stop, hold on, do you? Is this the smart play right now? Or if you're going to practice with some quality, but maybe actually it's to take some time out and go and do something else. Step away from the game, because practicing out of panic and anxiety and a lack of confidence because you don't think you're ready is not going to bear fruit come match day. Is not going to bear fruit come game day. So where I think it in part needs to be packaged better is helping players, helping participants, helping competitors become more attuned to their mind and their body, and more worldly in their view of how to develop, how to be ready to high perform, rather than this panicked, I've got to work. And I think something, moving on to your work in yoga, and I think sport like yoga, an activity I should say like yoga, can be really, really useful for young athletes to almost have active rest. And I might be saying the wrong thing there to a yoga teacher, but doing something that helps them to focus, to calm down, that is still physical, and so is therefore movement useful, but it's something that they can use to fill their days as well.
Yeah, I really think everything you said there is a great point, because funny enough, I talk about, I said this the other day, that every young athlete should have a career-ending injury early on in their career. And I say that because I had one when I was 15, and it was the best thing for me, because it gave me 2 years of not playing my sport, and it motivated me to now realise, one, okay, I'm not invincible. My body's not invincible. I need to look after it. I need to be smarter than it. Whatever I've done leading up to that wasn't good enough. I then had another bad, in a couple of injuries. I had 2 knee surgeries. That gave me about a year out, or like 6 months out. Again, gave me time to reflect. But I look at those moments of, yes, I was injured, but they were R&R. They were fun. They were forced R&R. And I thought, well, if I'd actually thought about this smarter and given myself those periods of time rather than had to have taken them when I didn't want them, I would be in a much better position. And that leads me on to how I started yoga. I was so tired of tearing muscles, getting soft tissue injuries, things that I thought I could control a lot better. I was working in the gym, I was strong, I was fit, I was a fitness player, but I was tearing hamstrings, I was tearing quads, and I was getting so frustrated with these little niggles. Okay, no amount of yoga would have ever stopped the injury that I got that ended my career, which was a final stress fracture in my back that was structural, and no amount of yoga would have helped me there. But it was the fact that these little niggly injuries that I could control and I wasn't really paying attention to. And it was because I was overtraining. It was because I was doing more. It was because I was doing quantity over quality. And I chose to put my ego aside. And when I thought yoga was only for hippies and I had to wear hemp trousers and Om and Chan, and I decided to come over that barrier and get into yoga by finding it online. And I started moving my body and looking after my body. And I saw it as a complete recovery tool. And I've been doing it for now 4 years. And I qualified as a teacher last year, and I actually then begun to enter into kind of the more mental practice, breathing, the bit more of the spiritual side of it. It came into my life a little bit more. But I don't teach like that. We did, with the True Athlete Project, it was really interesting. We had all the young athletes, and we had this mindfulness 6-week course that we did with them. And I'd obviously, being a yoga teacher, have studied mindfulness and do a lot more practice myself than others had. And one of them was meditation. The doctor that was a part of it had decided to teach the athletes we were going to do a meditation. And we did it over Skype. It was a big Skype call. And he said, right, sit down, close your eyes, and it was just a simple breathing exercise, but really like focusing on your breathing or focusing on your surroundings. It was a very, very simple meditation. And I spoke to Lawrence, who leads the project, after kind of offline, and I said, I bet you everyone struggled with that meditation. And the homework they'd given for the next week was for everyone to try and repeat that about 5 times in the week. I said, I bet you every single one of those athletes won't do that meditation, because to get an athlete who's physical, who wants to do something, to get them to go and sit down and do nothing and breathe and be with their thoughts it's nigh on impossible, because I was there at that stage. So we get there to next week and everyone checks in, did you do the homework? And sure enough, every single one, no, couldn't do it, couldn't get it, my head around, I had stuff to do, like training, whatever. There was always an excuse of why we couldn't do it. The next week, they introduced some very simple yoga moves, some very simple yoga poses that were physical and that you would to lengthen out body. And he gave the homework there, and he said, when you do this, after you've done the poses, sit and try like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute meditation breathing. And then again, I had this conversation with Lawrence and said, I bet you every single one of them will do this, because they'll connect with the movement to begin with, and then they'll find the time right there, the little minute or two after, to look after their minds. Sure enough, everyone comes in going, I found that so much easier, it was so much better. Like it was amazing how every single one was able to do it. And that's how I look at it. That's my approach to how I teach yoga now. I teach yoga for sport. I branded it the Sport Yogi, and that I now teach it to people who are active, who want to get into yoga, who want to basically do the thing that they love for longer. That's my goal, is to do the thing you love for longer, and to be able to, if you want to connect with the mental side and your mindfulness side, the gateway for most people is through the physical. So if you can strip away the spirituality and try and show people yoga that it's not about being a hippie, being on the top of a mountain, it's merely about connecting your body with your mind, and then everything else falls in place. I really believe if your body starts to feel good and healthy, your mind will follow, because that connection between your mind and your body is so powerful. So I'm just trying to open that gateway for people. Through my own experience, I realised that the way I'm teaching is not how many yoga teachers want. They want the spiritual element in, but the audience that I'm trying to aim it towards, it's not what they want. Like, I realise that it's physical world that we live in, and people want to feel something. They want to go to the gym, feel a pump, they want to whatever. So, okay, we'll give you that, but I'll slip in a meditation without you thinking about it and knowing about it. Don't worry, you'll find that peacefulness. So, and you see people change. You see people change in an hour. It's really powerful, and yeah, it's exciting to be a part of that. The main thing I'm looking at doing now is I'm creating an online platform for people to access yoga in their own home, and in this way that I've explained of teaching it, so that it's very simple to people add into their lives. It's very quick. It's just something. It's 10 minutes, 15 minutes here and there, something you can add in your own daily life, because doing just 10 minutes today is more than you were doing yesterday.
And that's really interesting. A really interesting point to finish on is that we tend to, as human beings, think in all or nothing terms. You know, well, if I'm going to do it, I've got to do an hour a day, and I've got to give up this and that, and commit to an enormous amount of time. But I think, as Lewis just said there, I completely agree. Just 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day can add up and make a big difference. Fantastic. And I think that neatly brings us to a close. I'm conscious of taking up too much of your time. If anybody listening is interested in getting in contact with you, Lewis, with regard your yoga venture, or for any other reason, how can they do that? Have you got social media? What's your email address?
So the social medias I'm on Instagram and Facebook at the Sport Yogi, and then also his website www.thesportyogi.com, or the email is hello@sportyogi.com. So yeah, if people were interested in doing yoga in their own home and subscribing to that, then that's where you can find it.
Lewis, thank you so much for joining the Sports Psych Show today. That was absolutely, well, I was riveted. Everybody, that was Lewis Hatchett. Wasn't that fascinating? And what I learnt there was that here's somebody who has had to demonstrate so much mental skill and to be able to reflect back and correlate it to what we know in sports psychology, the self-talk, the picturing, the visualization, the different little motivational pieces, being challenged every day to take ownership of his own technique, to experiment. I mean, every day sounded like a little mini experiment to develop a technique that enabled him to become a better bowler, to manage his physicality, the physical challenges he had, and then to bring in other areas such as yoga and mindfulness, meditation, to become that complete athlete. I think is absolutely fascinating. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do leave a review. Remember, you can subscribe to the Sports Psych Show to be alerted with any future updates. I hope you can join me again next week. Thanks very much for tuning in. Bye for now.